I'm really touched as a graduate of MIT, in molecular biology many decades ago, to be back here and to see that, like, if in 1971 when I left, you had offered meditation to a group of people like this, like the number of people in the room would be some very close approximation to zero. And now look around, and and you've all opted to come. So whether you're brand new to it and you're just kind of curious, or you've been in some sense aligned with whatever you understand by the word meditation, the invitation is to actually, as Judd Brewer actually mentioned, let's be very clear about this. It has to do with paying attention. And a number of presenters this morning talked about the power of attention. And I'm not going to be talking about technological interventions or biological interventions or any kind of interventions to optimize our biology. I'm going to talk about our self-regulatory capacity to optimize our biology, well-being, and health, and also social health, deep interconnectedness with the planet, because you can't be healthy in an unhealthy world. And so the invitation is to actually, funny as that may seem, befriend yourself in the only moment any of us are ever alive, and that's this one. And we're so much of the time catapulted out of the present moment because we got things on our mind, and including all the past and every planning and anxiety and all the things that pull us into the future. So it's a very, very compassionate invitation to actually befriend yourself in this only moment. And to not discount it, but to actually, from the inside for now, just experience what it is to be here as you drop in. And mindfulness, or the kind of meditation I teach, is called mindfulness, and Judd was speaking about it. If you need definitions of it, you can think of it either as pure awareness. Okay, so it's not something you have to get because it's something we're all born with. What we cultivate is a kind of more access to that dimension of our humanity, because we're so addicted to thinking and emotional reactivity and all sorts of other things that we get a little bit out of touch. So this is, in some sense, a gentle invitation to drop back into touch. And so that awareness, the access to awareness, is cultivated by paying attention. And you can help stabilize your attention, which tends to be very labile and perpetually distracted in this era, by actually deciding on an object to anchor your attention. And a very common one in meditation circles would be the felt sense of the body breathing. And in fact, if you're doing sitting meditation, because we could do it standing on your head or running outside along the river or rowing on the river. We've trained the Olympic rowing team in mindfulness, and Harvard and MIT rowing teams many years ago. You can do it under any circumstances as long as you're willing to be awake. So if you're an old hand at it, the invitation is just to practice however you care to. But if you would like to play with just experiencing the body as a whole, sitting here breathing, you can note that instantaneously you can actually feel the body sitting here breathing and know it in a kind of non-conceptual way, which is what awareness already is. And then the question is, can you sustain that knowing moment by moment as the breath comes in, breath goes out? So there's no place to go, there's nothing to do, and there's no particular something or special state that you're trying to attain. In fact, the best way to describe it is that whatever you're experiencing is insanely special, as all the neuroscience presentations have been pointing out. And the question is, can we actually receive them and embrace them in awareness without any agenda about getting somewhere else, but to actually be where we already are and experience life unfolding in this only moment. So the invitation is to, in some sense, ride with full awareness on the sensation of the breath coming into the body and the sensation of the breath leaving the body, or sensations. But to not do it as a kind of assignment, but to just receive it because it's all already happening anyway. So you're putting out the welcome mat. You can do it with your eyes closed, you can do it with your eyes open. You can attend through all your senses, of which I don't have to tell you. In this group there are far more than 5. But there are many different sense doors into this one room, which we call awareness, human awareness, hard to define, but we know it when we're here. And that awareness is embodied. And so we're already at home in this timeless moment we call now. Now, how many of you would say you're pretty much brand new to any kind of formal introduction to meditation? Just raise your hand so I have a sense of it. Very few. That already is like a real diagnostic indicator. But for those of you who raised your hands, the real meditation practice is not trying to get someplace else, but simply being where you already are. So there's no doing involved, no striving involved. And it won't take you long to notice that your mind has a life of its own. And although you've kind of given it a little assignment to attend to one object of attention, it's going to go anywhere and everywhere. And maybe you'll find this surprising or embarrassing or a little bit, kind of disappointing. But there's no question that, like, at some point you're going to lose touch with the breath or whatever object you've chosen for the meditation practice, and you will discover that, your thinking is virtually out of control. And of course, at MIT, what are we trained in except like being samurai thinkers? But it's got a life of its own. And the invitation is not to sort of fight with that, but to just let that be part of your awareness too. So then it's not a distraction, it's just that the awareness knows thinking. And it knows the content of thought, and it knows the emotional charge associated with the thought, but it doesn't have to get sucked into it. Or invariably it will get sucked into it, and then when you notice that, you can just, in the noticing, in the awareness-ing of that, you're already back in non-doing, in being, in pure awareness. So there's no failing at this as long as you cut yourself some slack and cultivate a certain kind of generosity or kindness. Nothing wrong with thinking, but there are multiple intelligences that we all have, and very often we exercise certain muscles and let others completely atrophy. And so this is, in a sense, a kind of broad spectrum, multi-dimensional phase space in which awareness just is fully in alignment with what you might call wakefulness, and fully embodied, and at the same time a sense like we're not here in isolation, we are all here together. Whether you knew what you were getting into when you came to this session, or whether you knew what you were getting into when you came to BrainMind itself. And so that deep aspect of social intelligence, social interconnectedness is also present. And we can learn to rest in awareness. As, if you will, the default mode, to use neuroscience terminology, the default mode, as opposed to mindlessness, which is where, we're constantly caught up in the story of me, some narrative or other that we're generating, running, about the future, about the past, about what we want, what we don't want, pushing things away, pursuing things. And it's just like, for a moment, just like letting that all be and defaulting to this boundless spaciousness of awareness itself that you can experience for yourself as boundless and spacious, centerless. Try to find the periphery. Take a moment right now and see if you can find the periphery or the circumference of your awareness, the outer limit of your awareness. See if you can find a center for the domain of what we call awareness. From a first-person perspective, it's like really an interesting place to see if we can inhabit this boundless spaciousness. And then bring it to every aspect of life unfolding 24/7. As if your life depended on it, because there's no question that our lives absolutely do depend on whether we're actually present or not, whether we're distracted or not, whether we're in touch with emotions that cross the face of another, especially someone we love or care about. So while it's easy to trivialize, this is non-trivial and may ultimately be a difference maker in whether our species as a whole can live its way into the name we gave ourselves, Homo sapiens sapiens, which from the Latin means sapere, means to taste or to know, but it's not conceptual knowing, mere conceptual or cognition kind of knowing. It's more like the species that is aware and knows and is aware that it's aware. And that may make all the difference in the future of the species at this juncture on the planet in terms of this conference is focused on health and disease, individual bodies and social challenges, isolation, depression, poverty, income inequality, all of those kinds of things that are the major drivers of disease. But then there's the disease that we've managed to give the planet. And so awareness is big enough to hold it all with no effort in this only moment. So what I'd like you to do is just, I'll stop talking, although the invitation has been from the start to drop underneath my words and just be in a silence that's not disturbable by sounds or anything else or voice. So that if it's your default mode, this is like it. And you can always come back when our habits of mind take over. And ultimately, I've come to see for myself that it's kind of a love affair to drop in this way, to take your seat, to take a stand in your life, in the central axis of your being, what you care about, the reason you do science, the reason you do medicine, the reason you do social action, the reason we're here together to try to make something bigger come about. It's all part of the curriculum of not only humanity, but the curriculum of mindfulness, of full awareness, of maybe being human. And we'll each do it in our own way. There's no one right way. Plenty of wrong ways, but there's no one right way to cultivate wakefulness. So in the remaining moments of this time together, let's just bathe in the silence and stillness. And rest as if your life depended on it, with the gentlest of touches, moment by moment, by moment, by moment, in awareness. Now, if your eyes have been closed, I invite you to open them, and noticing that as you do that, that you can maintain awareness. If we were to get up and dance, and we're going to be listening to music in a few moments, I mean, it's important to emphasize the real meditation practice doesn't have either a beginning or an end. It's none other than life itself. It's not sitting cross-legged like a statue in the British Museum or the Museum of Fine Arts across the river. It's an invitation to show up completely in a fully embodied way as you. And of course, that's just a pronoun, you or me or I, and we have very little idea what we mean when we use personal pronouns. And it may be, and some of the science, of course, is exploding around mindfulness now, and And it's getting, I would say, on the whole, more and more rigorous. There's no question that it drives functional connectivity in certain ways. And Judd's work has shown that beautifully, and modulates and regulates PCC and many other networks within the brain. So this really is, in some sense, at least I've come to see it as a love affair with life itself, to actually make sure that we don't get so caught up in all the doing and in all the getting somewhere else that we forget who's doing the doing and lose touch with the domain of being as in human beings. And I would say that the stakes are actually very high, not just in terms of personal mental health or physical health or well-being, all of which are impacted by how we actually unfold our lives and our life choices, behaviorally, emotionally, socially, in every other way, which can all be held in awareness moment by moment by moment. But also, on the larger level of things, and why we do science, why we explore these kinds of things, so that it really can be, and this meeting itself, in a certain way, I see it as a kind of love affair with what's possible when we stop sort of talking within our silos and we expand things to a kind of larger dimension. And I would say that the world is actually starving for, if not dying for, as I said, us to wake up as a species and to understand what would be called for if we were to do that. And so I just feel incredibly honored to have had this time with you this afternoon. If there's anything that I've said or that you've felt during this very brief time together that comes back to you at some of the point during this meeting or in your life, my one counsel would be trust it, listen to it, nurture it, feed it, and let it teach you, let it remind you of what you already know. Let it rebody you, if to coin a phrase, why not? Because so much of the time we're out to lunch and out of our bodies. And then see, an N of one experiment of how this interfaces with not just your life, but what you love, who you love, and how vast that extends out. So we have 3 or 4 more minutes, and I'm compressing something that, obviously it'd be better if we had a week or a day or whatever. But I think conversation and dialogue is a very, very important part of meditation practice. So if anybody has a comment or question that you want to squeeze into the next 2 or 3 minutes before we have the musical presentation, get back to the afternoon's curriculum, don't be shy, Yes, Nancy?
All of the high-functioning people in this room must be planning far ahead, much of their lives. They wouldn't be where they were if they weren't doing that. So talk to us about that. You're not counseling that they shouldn't be doing that.
No, of course not.
Right.
No, so the question, high-functioning people. Of course, everybody in this room is by definition a high-functioning person, or you wouldn't be here. At least we like to think that of ourselves. So is this going to take the edge off, or is this antithetical to actually living our lives as if they really mattered, and and achieving our purposes, whether they're individual or our labs, major sort of engagements, or the world, whatever it is? The answer is, well, you got to test that for yourself. But I would say that what it does is recruit not single, but multiple domains of intelligence that actually help us to get stuff done. I mean, a lot of it's who's got enough time on the planet? Does anybody in this room have enough time to get it all done that you want to get done? No. But when you hold that in awareness, then you can actually navigate that space without stressing yourself up the wazoo. I mean, this has known medical effects on people who have very, very high stress, because you're taking time to, sometimes I frame it this way when we're talking about bringing mindfulness into the public school system, which is happening big time, because teachers can't even teach because the kids haven't learned how to pay attention, and for very real reasons. But you can basically see for yourself whether tuning your instrument of attention doesn't actually help you to play the life of the lab, or the life of relationships, or the life of the world, or just your own interior life, going out for a run along the river, or a row, or whatever it is. The beauty of this is that it doesn't take any time to be aware. You might think, oh my God, now I got to meditate, and I'm going to feel guilty if I don't. That's nonsense. That's what that's called? In this high-functioning group of people, it's called thinking. And sometimes we actually mistake our thoughts for reality, and that is really sort of, in some sense, defeating ourselves at the starting line. So it's very helpful to have a kind of bigger, broader, multi-dimensional perspective to gentle ourselves into allowing it to be okay to live fully, and it doesn't cut down on your creativity as far as I can see. Actually, it amplifies our ability to see just beyond what our mental constructs often blind us to, where it's like that next thing. They're like, why did that person see that and win the Nobel Prize? Why didn't I see it? I had the whole thing as well as she did. And the answer is like, that's a good question. Because sometimes we get in our own ways, and then, what's obvious the moment before isn't so obvious. And more thinking may not be the way there. More resting in awareness and trusting in emergence. Of course, I don't have to tell this audience, the brain and the mind have like an infinite number of different ways to come up with moments of insight. I guess my answer was so long-winded, we probably should stop at this point. I just want to thank you for showing up. I thought, when I saw it on the schedule, optional, I love the optional, because opting in is where it's all about, and nobody has to tell you to do that, tell any of us to do that, and that means a lot to me. So thank you for your attention.